Hey, San Diego. Welcome to our podcast. This is another recorded episode of Stay Classy San Diego, with video production provided by MaxLex Media at KCBQ with your host, Steve Wire. This podcast is dedicated to keeping you informed and engaged with the latest political events and trending news in the San Diego area. Join us on a weekly exploration as we sit down with prominent community members, political figures, insightful analysts, business leaders, and more. Don't forget to like our video and subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and enjoy the show.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Stay Classy San Diego. I'm your guest host, Steve Petersky, filling in for Steve Wire. Today, I am joined by Rebecca Jones, the mayor of San Marcos. Thank you so much. Today, we'll also be talking a little bit about SANDAG, the spiciness going on there, the new CEO search, the state of the regional transportation plan. And then also we're going to dig into a little bit of what's going on in San Marcos. A lot of action and activity going on there, big things happening. So we just wanted to detail some of those things for the audience a little bit. But Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So SANDAG, one of your favorite subjects,
Yeah.
I think, and you know, one across the county. But yeah, you know, there's a new CEO search, a lot of things going on with the organization now, and especially coming off of the heels of, you know, yourself and Ryan Kine from Oceanside getting the road user charged chucked from the regional transportation plan. That was a big win for a lot of people. And I think a lot of residents too. It definitely wasn't something that played well. But if you could give us a quick little recap on that, just for the audience to know. I know there was a lot of coverage around it, but just your thoughts on the ruck.
Yeah, so let me just talk about SANDAG for one moment.
Sure.
So SANDAG is the regional planning agency for transportation in San Diego County. All cities have a representative, so there are 18 cities plus the county, so 19 agencies that are represented there. It is the most hostile environment I've honestly ever seen. And, you know, I've been on the city council since January of 2007. I was elected 3 times as council member, and then I just got reelected twice, the second time as mayor. So I've been doing this a long time, 5 elections, and here I am. I've never seen anything as a regional agency the way that it is today. It's very hostile, and I think a lot of the board members have forgotten, A, who they work for, and B, to read what they are voting on and getting prepared. And so I find it personally very frustrating because I do take the time and effort to serve all of the citizens of San Diego County. And, you know, one thing that I think is really important is that we're given thousands of pages that we're supposed to read to make good decisions, and it's just not happening. And so, again, you talked about Hassan Akrada leaving the agency. We can't even decide on, you know, how to move forward on that. We do have 2 deputy CEOs, and, you know, it's really important that we have, you know, talent that is within our organization, but also outside. But there is some upper management that is extremely toxic, and I spoke about this at the last SANDAG meeting. And that is actually calling board members in the organization saying, if you don't vote for something, you are going to lose certain projects, and this is going to happen at a board meeting. And just things like that should never be happening. The fact that any SANDAG staff member thinks that they could actually call an elected official, and, you know, it was kind of interesting because it became so toxic. I brought this up, and I brought it up for a reason, and that was, I wanted people to understand what's going on in the organization, how far it has gone to a level where there is not much work happening. There is a situation where you've got a board chair, vice chair, that is, board chair is Nora Vargas, supervisor Nora Vargas. Vice chair is Sean Elo Rivera from San Diego. And Lisa Hebner is the second vice chair from the city of Solana Beach. You have an organization that is no longer listening to the board members. Part of it, I think, has to do with our actual leadership, but a lot of it has to do with, honestly, the organization and the unwillingness for different voices to be heard and actually collaborated with. And, anytime something like that happens, you're going to be wasting lots of money. The last meeting that we had, the vote that I was talking about, where board members were, called up and said, okay, if you don't approve this in its entirety, there are going to be SANDAG Transnet projects that are going to be lost. And, that's important in itself, Steve, because we had $92 million of Transnet money that we were talking about how that would be allocated. Many of those dollars that were federal and state dollars that we were actually talking about at that last meeting also was $673 million in total, which included the $92 million. $92 million of that and many of the matching dollars were actually brought only because of those dollars that are paid for by the citizens of San Diego County. And yet you had Transnet projects that were voted on, by the way, in 2004 that are now going to be pushed out. And I'm going to give you an example of that. The 5 interconnectors right there at the 5 and the 78.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big
The
problem.
environmental is not going to be completed via that action until 2030. Think about this, 2030. I am absolutely blown away that any of the board members, because, we are all supposed to, represent the citizens of San Diego County, could think in any possibility of a reality that that's a good thing.
Right.
But we actually are there to represent the citizens of San Diego County, every single one of them. And yet, 2004, here we are, 2030, we're still not even going to have the environmental done.
So you bring up the I-578 interchange, and obviously that's a big problem for any of you in San Diego County who've driven that stretch. There's a stoplight on Vista Way, and it just can back up forever. It's not very functional. But there was also a massive, and I think it was, former Carlsbad Mayor Matt Hall had told me about, I think it was 2008-9, where there was the most comprehensive and expensive study around that intersection and that highway ever done. It was in the state of California. It was, I believe, $75 million. So
sounds about right.
It seems like some of that work has already been done, and maybe they could just look at those environmental reports and maybe do some updates and cut that timeline by years. I mean, this has got to be in a source of frustration and aggravation for residents, as this is government bureaucracy and just slowdown at its worst. 7 years for an environmental review. It's hard to wrap the mind around that. And like you said, just the board not really respecting that. It's hard to believe. So
it's actually a slap in the face of San Diego County residents, in my opinion, because the action that was actually taken was that we move forward other projects ahead of that. So for instance, and I'm a San Diego County native.
Right.
I've lived here my whole life. I'm 56 years old. I take that back. I did live away for 2 years. But other than those 2 years, I've lived in San Diego County my whole life. I understand the issues with the airport, but to push forward an airport connection ahead of the 78-5, and this is just for the environmental, by the way, I think a lot of citizens don't really understand, and I know it's complex. I read all of what I'm given, so I probably am in more of the know than most board members. In fact, I know for sure I am. But this is the problem. No one knows.
Real quick, you say the airport connector. That's the people mover.
Yes,
right?
that we never actually voted on, Steve. Never actually voted on that
LA has done
project.
that, and it's just this awkward-looking thing. I don't know how to just. And then there's other airports that have had them. Anyone could go search it, but it just seems like an awkward thing to install when you're already. The plan is to connect the light rail to the airport already, or the trolley. So
well, there's not actually, they call it the Central Mobility Hub / Airport Connector, though there is no actual location for the actual Central Mobility Hub. I have to tell you, Deputy Mayor Keim actually brought it down pretty succinctly as to each step that was taken by SANDAG. We never voted on a final project. However, we've already got over $70 million now based on that action to get the environmental done, to move this forward to the front of the line ahead of what we already promised citizens back in 2004. That is a slap in the face of all residents of San Diego County. And guess what? The elected leaders that are voting for this don't care about what you voted on. And they're bringing forward another ballot measure that they're calling a citizens initiative. It's not, Steve. It's the unions and the environmental groups that are bringing this forward. And hey, we should absolutely protect our environment.
That's the half
cent.
It
is. It's another half-cent sales tax. By the way, we're paying until 2040, Transnet dollars.
Mm-hmm.
We're not getting those projects. Again, let's go back. 2004, we approved this. 2020, the environmental only will be completed for the 578 connectors. I think that is a big deal because you've got, again, as you mentioned earlier, a stoplight. It's better, obviously, than the stop sign that was there, but not that much better. And, a lot of goods movement happens on that stretch of the freeway. It's not just cars. There is definitely an assault on cars. And, you also mentioned the road user charge. I wanted to talk about that other stuff because I think it's really important for people to understand what's going on. But the road user charge, many of the board members that voted for the road user charge originally, not including myself because I voted against it, were saying, now is not the right time for a road user charge. Guess what I have to say about that? Unless it pays for road improvements, which it doesn't, right. The regional road user charge was never, ever allocated to pay for any road improvements. No construction, no capital projects, nothing for a road or a highway, nothing. It was all to go to active transportation, which is bike lanes, or capital projects for transit. Only. So when people are on the board saying, oh my gosh, this is to pay for, the road improvements, that's an absolute outright lie. I've said this so many times. I can tell you right now, many of the board members never read what they voted on. They're totally misinformed. Every time I brought it up, they just ignored. And then they point to me and say, "Oh, you're being, a certain way. I'm bringing attention the truth." So that's what I feel like I am a truth teller down there, and it's very frustrating. But back to the road user charge. So it is not in the 25 update.
Right.
We haven't actually, we voted to not have it in the 25 update. However, that plan hasn't come forward yet. We also voted to take it out of the 21 plan, which honestly was just truly symbolic. And that cost about $1.5 million. But, I think for all residents, they need to pay attention to who voted on this in the first place. What cities voted for this? What is your leadership doing in your city? And, I think there's going to be a push now, since there is no actual road user charge, which, by the way, again, never was to pay for any road improvements or construction. I think there will be a push of the conversions. And when I talk about conversions, that is changing lanes that are highway lanes or transit lanes. I'm sorry, not transit lanes, highway lanes or local roads, arterials, that sort of thing, and making them toll roads. Okay, so this next step will, be monies, they say, that will be for everything. So I think that's likely what is to happen. But, even if it's allocated for all different sorts of things, after this last vote of Transnet, of what we're actually using those Transnet match funds on, moving forward projects ahead of what voters decided to tax themselves on, I think it's obvious that the elected officials, not all of them, but the majority of the elected officials at SANDAG don't care about actually respecting and doing the right thing of having a balanced transportation system. They're all in on the expensive transit projects that are fixed rail. Those are not the future. The future technology really will be autonomous vehicles, that sort of thing. It actually moves cars through quicker. And when you talk about greenhouse gas reductions, a lot of the things that people don't even understand is there is legislation through the state that is to reduce your greenhouse gases, GHGs, but it's also to reduce your VMT, which is your vehicle miles traveled. Vehicle miles traveled is an important thing to understand because it doesn't mean that you're driving a carbon emission vehicle. You could be driving electric. You could actually be driving natural gas. You could be driving
diesel, whatever.
Yeah, anything that is even if it doesn't have any carbon emissions, zero carbon emission vehicles. They want to reduce your VMT, which is your vehicle miles traveled.
Yeah.
This is a complete failure of our legislature of being realistic and trying to control people's behavior, and it really is all about control.
So, because the state has pushed out these, aggressive mandates, the green energy transition, same with vehicles. What is the solution to reduce some of these emissions? How does it go about? Because I understand the point, that the Republican side has made with, cost, and especially when you have either the highest or the second highest state cost of living, right?
Yeah.
Maybe outside of Hawaii. These things are in place, and so how does one go about, or your side try to bring to the table some solutions that are counter to what they're trying to do?
Well, when you say my side, I would say that I'm on the side of all residents of the county, and
but regardless, it's still a partisan thing on the board.
And so let's just talk a little bit about that. So when you talk about VMT, I've asked this numerous times. Some people can't answer me, and when I say VMT, well, let me ask you, why would you need to control how many vehicle miles I travel if I'm driving in a zero-emission vehicle? It's crickets, just like right now.
Yeah.
There is no answer to that. And the truth is, it really is about control. It doesn't have anything to do with actual carbon emissions, greenhouse gases, making a cleaner environment. Because if you look at, even, just the future of technology, all the things that we are innovating out of and having zero emission vehicles, how is it that vehicle miles traveled can actually be a thing?
Well, I agree that it's a wild concept. Obviously, even with the zero emissions, what would it matter if you kept driving your normal routes, or living your day to day as is. But I think another bigger concern is the counties, cities, they don't get credit for electric vehicle reductions in GHGs.
Why is that?
That was a law written by the now current Sacramento mayor back in 2007 or 8. So somebody was playing the long game on that, and it doesn't seem to compute. The state can take credit for it, but these agencies don't. So when I try to explain this to people, I'll say, well, okay, look at it this way: you're at 100% of your emissions target, right? That you have to try to reduce. Well, now let's say if your EMTs took away 40% of that, really these cities and counties have to hit 140%, which isn't mathematically possible, right?
Well,
so I don't know how they go about trying to meet these goals, and to some of them too, I don't think they're realistic in the timeline, because technology, while it moves lightning fast, it doesn't move that fast, because you have supply chains that take years to catch up with that technology,
and
more
so even since the actual pandemic.
Right.
So let's talk about that. Let's break that all down for 1 minute. We have laws that are completely unrealistic. I'm very pragmatic. I am not someone that lives in an alter universe that's not reality. I live in reality. I see that we don't have enough electricity to actually motorize these electric vehicles. But then we also have other technologies where, that are zero carbon emission vehicles. But the bottom line is, again, the VMT, you have this unrealistic, it's not about actual gas. It's not really about that. It's about something else. And, you've got these climate action goals that are not attainable. And, I for one, am always, and I say this pretty often, you might have heard me actually say this before, but I live in a reality where I think we should be aggressive on goals, but we shouldn't set goals for ourselves that cannot be met. And, you've got to look at every decision in its totality, right? You can't just say, okay, well, we want to have this fantasy at 2035, we are not going to have any more gas-powered vehicles. Do you know who actually has most of the gas-powered vehicles today?
Oh, it's the middle class and lower income folks.
That's right.
Secondary
That's right.
market, too, is going to be a big thing that you can't regulate.
Hey there, San Diego. I've been using Dorado nutrition supplements for a little while now, and I can tell you they've made a huge difference in my health journey. Not only are they made in the USA with high-quality ingredients, but they're also rigorously tested for purity, potency, and safety. And the results speak for themselves. With ingredients like Fidosia agrestis and Tonkat Ali, I've seen more energy, better gut health, improved T levels, muscle mass, and performance. And the best part is that you can get $5 off of your next purchase with the promo code STAYCLASSY at checkout. Trust me, if you're looking to take your health and performance to the next level, Dorado Nutrition is the way to go.
So people, and we're seeing now too, and we don't know how this will impact in the future, but the EV market, especially on a national scale, when you're talking about these major car manufacturers, they have suffered billions in losses over the last couple of years, and there's major battles going on with these supply chains, especially at the bottom of the supply chain when you're talking about mining, getting these rare earth minerals, right, all that stuff, and the functionality of it and how much you need to scale up for just a battery. That's a lot of material you need, and everybody's fighting for it. And so how much does that put on the delay on these electric vehicles? Are there a finite amount of resources that you could, maybe EVs are only a stopgap type of measure, but I don't know. But we're going to see how that plays. And then again, can that scale down the cost of a brand new electric vehicle? Sometimes they're very expensive to repair. The insurance industry, for example, if you have a Tesla and you don't have Tesla insurance, almost and the people I've talked to and stories I've done on the the auto industry insurance. And it's wild. If you get in an accident and you don't have that Tesla insurance, your insurance is basically just going to total out that car. So now you're either driving with an uninsured car or something that is risky, or you're having to wait I don't know how long to get a new vehicle. So that's a challenge too right now in the market.
So being in local government, if I were queen for the day, do you know what I would like to say? I would like to say, you know what? As government, we need to be innovative. And I think one of the innovative things the most innovative thing that we could do is to look at every single one of our laws and see if it actually is fact-based in reality of what's actually happening. And, I think a lot of time government really fails in this. They look at it and they say, I want, I wish, I hope. Guess what? Reality reacts very differently. And you know what? Let's just talk about the pandemic for 1 second. And it's really important to bring that up right now for the simple fact of we didn't know things in the beginning. As things moved on and we saw what was working and wasn't working, we adjusted. Why can't we do that with our climate action plans? Why can't we do that with what we're seeing on the ground? We can't just continue to make rules and regulations that aren't working. And this is, one of the things that I brought up during SANDAG. It doesn't work. The board structure does not work. And, I know I'm encompassing several things, but I think that's the failure of government. Government needs to look at reality. They need to remember that they serve Republicans, Democrats, and independents alike, every single one of them. And to say that we're going to keep pushing for things that aren't working and laws that are not working, laws that are failing people, laws that are, in my opinion, going to hurt our middle and low class the most. When I'm talking about, when I'm talking about low class, I'm talking about income, okay, right. Lower income. When you're talking about hurting the lower income and the middle income the most by these laws and not looking at them and making adjustments as needed, we're failing them. And, most people fall in the lower income and the middle class arena. And when we're making these ridiculous laws that hurt them And we won't actually take the time to say, you know what, this didn't work out. We're going to have to make adjustments. We shouldn't even be in government anymore, to be honest.
To pivot real quick,
Yeah.
because you brought it up a couple times on the board, and I saw a letter from Melanie Burkholder talking, addressing Chairwoman Nora Vargas about kind of overstepping her bounds, or at least that's how she feels and some on the board feel. And with the dynamics of the board over the last few years, and even Hassan has said this, that it's just kind of worn on him and others, and there seems to be no ability to strike middle ground or common ground.
That's not true.
You don't think so?
I actually no. The proposal that Melanie Burkholder presented on Friday was not to change any of the projects that were in that.
Oh no, I didn't say it was.
No,
it was just,
I know.
Again, showing the fracture between the board and the leaders of the board, and maybe it's the the Democratic side and the Republican side. Just it's that partisan stuff. Like, can there be compromise on some of these bigger scale things? I mean, it sounds like on some of them there are, but those are to be honest, those are kind of just rudimentary things that is normal type of business. So yeah, of course everybody's going to vote yes on, but when it comes to the heavy hitting stuff, it takes years. Like what we saw with the ruck, where it was you and Kime finally were able to outmaneuver them, and polling probably had a big deal to do with that as well. But it just seems like there's a lot of hostilities on the board. There's not a lot of collaboration, or at least that's the way the board presents itself to me. So what are your thoughts on that?
So can and will are two different things. Can there be compromise on the board? Absolutely. Will there be? Not as long as you've got people that are elected that are working for other entities that are outside of their scope. I don't work for a party. I don't work for one group of people. I work for everyone. So when I'm there, I am truly, trying to work for everyone. When I look at that People Mover project, I think that it probably will be a waste of money. I don't think it will do what we expect it to do. I haven't seen the data that actually proves that up. So that being said, I didn't try to take it out of the actual budget amendment on Friday. What I tried to do was to prioritize the 2004 projects that we promised San Diego County residents ahead of something that came later. That was what the motion was. That's what Melanie Burkholder's motion was. I supported it and I seconded that motion because I truly do believe that we can work together, but there is an unwillingness, as you had said. And I think, as people start to pay attention, and I'm talking about voters need to pay attention to who's voting for what. And not just about what they tell you, because anyone can tell you anything. Watch their votes. Look at how they're saying, how they're voting at that board. Look at what they're saying, every single word, because many of them say one thing and they actually do something else. Chairwoman Vargas, when I brought up the whole situation about one of the staff coming forward, if those board members were comfortable to talk about it, they would have said something. I'm sure it'll come out at some point in time. But she literally started losing her cool and saying, I want to know who this was right now from staff and who said this, who did this. And it's like, wow, let's just make a witch hunt out of it because that's what it will become. And, I think, I try to speak for everyone, even the voiceless, the board members that are maybe newer to the board when they are afraid to speak up. I want to be their voice. I want to have them see that they can be comfortable enough to have their voices heard. I think Friday was an absolute train wreck when you think about, can they feel comfortable to speak up? I don't think so. I think Friday proved that you will be bullied and you will be absolutely railroaded into a situation where you are vilified. And even I was vilified. I honestly, I've been doing this so long, Steve, that I have the thick skin for it. But I have to tell you, many of the board members are scared. They're scared to speak up because they see what's going to happen. And, I hope that changes. But as long as you have people that are going to be bullying them, that will never change. So again, electing people that are not bullies, I think, is an important thing. But also, making sure that you tell your representative, I don't like it when you do that. I need you to stand up for me. I need you to speak truth, have the data behind you to prove that truth. One thing I would like to say is I oftentimes on social media am questioned on things, and I give people links. I'm all about the facts. I give people links to the actual factual information. They're like, oh, the road user charge does pay for road improvements. And then I send them the documents. I say, the document is located here. Here's where you find it. It's on this page. It tells you very clearly that that's not the case. And, I think as more people have the courage to do something like that, I think we will see a shift. But you're right, it could take quite a while
Well,
for
if
that
people
to
are
happen.
scared to even voice an opinion to represent their city on a regional agency like that, then what's the point? You know, people, they're going to get hammered. They could get hammered by their own party. They could be hammered by the other party or the other members. Like you said, the toxicity of it permeates throughout there. There's fear, and that's obviously driven by a political motivation for control, to direct dollars wherever it needs to go. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people out there who I've talked to who look at SANDAG as just kind of a nice big slush fund for the city of San Diego to get their
Sure.
infrastructure projects done because they're so underwater by billions of dollars. But at the same time, if you can't come together, I guess my original question would stand, like, what's the point? And especially with new voting systems like the weighted vote. But how is, I don't know, it's just does it add, how does it add any credibility? It just seems that would just further erode the credibility of the organization, of the board, and bring absolutely no confidence to anybody in the county.
The organization is a failure. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. It is a failure. I 100% agree with that. However,
Oh, I didn't say it was. I was just saying
It
could-
is.
The perception could be that it's a failure.
oh, it is a failure. But I think back to your point. You made a couple of points there. For me, I just won my 5th election. When I'm done with this term in San Marcos, it'll be 20 years that I've served. 20 years. 20 years that I've tried to make a difference. I'm not giving up. I personally believe that no matter what happens, there's no right way to do the wrong thing. I know that's very idealistic, but at the end of the day, I am planning on running for county supervisor for
Okay.
District 5. Jim Desmond's going to be termed out. I plan on running for that seat because I know that even my time on the board, although it doesn't always look like it, I have been able to move the needle. And I am one person that has been very steadfast in all that I've done, and and very consistent and very fact-based, very factual. We can't give up. If our founding fathers gave up, we wouldn't even have a country. So if you think about history and what happens, every single person needs to do their part. Every single person needs to figure out how to work together. Let's talk about, getting along. Marriage, I'm just going to bring marriage in, even though I'm not married, but any relationship is give and take. You have to figure out how to serve everyone. As long as there is a sense and an empowerment, as there is right now, that only one party matters, well, then we're going to have issues. But if you continue to say, we need both voices heard and we need to collaborate, and we need, as long as you have people that are sensibly speaking, like myself, that's where I think you get people to listen and pay attention and say, you know what, I want that too. Maybe I lean more Democrat or independent or Republican, but I want someone that is going to represent me in a way that is collaborative, because I know that at one point in time, no matter what happens, you dig your heels in, nothing is going to get done. Relationships have to be about people working together, because dominance is not, we live in a free country. We still do. And, we have to remember that and, remind ourselves that unless we work together, and that is our end goal, we will never, ever be able to continue to move forward as a civilized society.
Hey, Stay Classy listeners, Steve here, and we have a new friend of the show I can't wait to share with you. None other than Legendary Group, San Diego's premier nightlife company that specializes in making your nights unforgettable. If you haven't heard already, they are the go-to source for connecting you to the best events in the city and handling all of your VIP needs. To access the very best of San Diego, visit www.legendarygroup.com. That's www.lgndrygroup.com for more information.
Well, let's talk about some of those things where that you are making a difference in the city of San Marcos.
Yeah.
A lot of things happening there. Big things, good things, kind of a transformation of the city is kind of how I see it in some respects of certain projects and things that you guys have been able to get done. But first of all, you guys hired a new city manager. Obviously, that's no small thing. It's one of the most important, if not the most important position in a city. Just tell us a little bit about the new city manager and what the expectations there.
Well, it is. It's a very exciting time in San Marcos, and I can definitely attest to the fact that when I joined the council in 2007, our city was a very different city. We didn't have a low crime rate. We didn't have. We were fiscally responsible because that was historically our city has always been that way. But we had a lot of challenges. We have a lot of growing pains. We're definitely one of the fastest growing cities in the county. Many of the reasons for that is, first of all, we've got a large student population, about 40,000 students coming in every single day.
Right.
And, of a city just under 100,000, that's pretty significant. And then we also have, a city that's centrally located between the 5 and the 15, right off the 78. So that's a good thing. We also have, some land that's still available and, redevelopment opportunities. So all of those things really lend to a bustling city, which we have been. We're just finishing up our largest capital improvement project in our city's history. We should be wrapped up around the end of the year with that. And probably right around $120 million when all is said and done, with an accompanying $40 million. So really about $160 million in infrastructure that really will help the flooding in our city, but also make it easier for people to move around, even including our students. We just had our Kaiser Permanente Hospital open this year in August. And, the lowest crime rate in our city's history. We are the lowest crime rate in the county. We kind of go back and forth with Poway, which they don't have a highway that bisects them as we do. So we have more challenges and still maintaining the lowest or second lowest crime rate in the whole county, which in the old days when I joined the city council, it wasn't like that. And so, being fiscally responsible, and, a lot of people don't know this either. We, our tax rate, our property tax rate is 1%, the same as most cities. But our share of that as a city is only 7.1 cents out of every dollar. That's significant because, we're able to maintain some of the highest response times in our fire department. We have a Class 1 agency, which that's one of the factors of how quickly they're able to respond to emergencies and all that. We have done so much with so little. I'm really proud about that. And, so moving forward, we do have challenges. And, so hiring a new city manager, our past city manager, Jack Griffin, he was with us for 11 years. He moved on, and, having a new city manager, Michelle Bender, she's been with us for, probably 14 years, I think it is. She started out in HR, but she's been acting city manager when our city manager is out of town, and also our assistant city manager. One of the things that she started off her tenure was with a customer experience team. We do realize with a lot of things that are going on within our community and our development and all of those things, we sometimes get in the way because government does that. We've got our red tape. We're not immune to that, but we definitely want the customer experience, whether that be you're a resident or you are a property owner and you want to develop your property or you want to open a business in our city. Everyone matters in our community. And I think that's one of the things about my leadership that has been, something that I've always done. And that is making sure that I serve everyone. But Michelle Bender also has that as one of her benchmarks of who she is. And so, really caring about our community, caring about the experience with our residents is really important for her. So, starting off that customer experience team. We also do have our app, our San Marcos app, which is a report a concern. We want people to use that, utilize that, and whenever they have issues, let us know, because feedback is really important for us. And, I tell people often, I know it sounds weird, but being an elected official, and again, running 5 campaigns, being out on the ground 5 times, asking people, what can we do better? What do you like about our city? What can we improve on? I think that's one of the best things about, running a campaign. But also, we want to hear from our residents on a regular basis. How can we better improve your quality of life? What can we do? And, we can't do everything, obviously, all at once. But to have that as part of our moving forward goals. And, I think Michelle really takes all of these things to heart. And, so it's an exciting time for us, for her. Again, largest capital improvement project, lowest crime rate in our city's history, also in the county. And let's talk about homeless for a minute too. We have actually 7% of our total housing stock is deed restricted affordable. I think that makes a big difference in, being able to keep people from becoming homeless. We have only about it's in the single digits of our point in time count of homeless population. We obviously would love to have 0, but that's not always possible. We want people to get help. We work very hard in connecting them to services. But I think our affordable housing has been a deterrent from people becoming homeless. That's been extremely intentional on our part. In my time, we have 2,338 deed restricted affordable housing units, or actually I think it's 2,400 now. Over 1,100 of those have been built in my tenure on the city council. I've been very supportive of that. I think, as much as we possibly can, and even it's become more important, is improving people's quality of life, but keeping them from becoming homeless individuals. Not everyone is a high income earner. And, I mentioned that a little bit earlier. Our low income, our lower income class is people, they're people that we need to be working hard for always. And, things like providing them a home is important, making sure that they're not paying regressive taxes like fees to drive on their local roads, or, a vehicle miles travel fee. All these fees continue to disintegrate their quality of life. We don't want that. So, everything that we possibly can do to make sure they have a good quality of life is important. Creating spaces. And so, you talked a little bit about North City. North City is growing.
I wanted to get into that.
Yeah.
So I got 3 things for you here.
Okay.
On that front of the active things that are going on in San Marcos. So we got North City, which we'll define here in a second, the Creek Project and Restaurant Row redevelopment.
Yeah.
So North City it's not a redevelopment, it's just a straight up development that's been going on for about 10 years now. Multi-billion-dollar project, thousands of homes, businesses. It's across the street from Cal State San Marcos, kind of a young professional urban core, I guess you could say it's kind of transforming your city, and that's kind of the new downtown happening hotspot. And it still has about 10 years to go for build out.
It does.
But the one of the big things though, and this is a first, is the developer Seabreeze has broken ground on I believe it's 2 12-story buildings.
One 12-story building.
One 12-story building. But it's the highest one in North County.
It is.
Maybe you guys get one of those, cool Midwestern fancy signs so people can pull off the highway and check it out. But there is a lot going on there. And just tell me a little bit about, what that project has been like and kind of how it's transforming San Marcos.
So, a lot of people ask me where's San Marcos downtown. We never really had one. You know, the history is what's important. And I say this all the time. History is so important for so many reasons. One is, obviously so you don't make the same mistakes twice, but history is also important in planning.
Right.
So when you think about, planning North City, becoming that city that does have a downtown core, it doesn't happen overnight. It is something that's been very intentional. I'm actually the only council member that's left that approved this project originally. We approved it back in 2009.
Oh, wow.
It's finally coming to fruition.
Yeah.
I would say that probably the most successful and important part about North City is that the money behind North City is a private family that is not affected too much by the market.
Okay.
And they live in England, and they're investing in a long-term goal of wanting to have a special space. And, earlier this year, we did approve some changes, revisions to that plan.
Right.
The first significant changes that we've made, and that is to provide more open space, to create that sense of space, to make it more attractive to what's. And this is government doing what they should be doing. That is going back and saying, hey, what we're seeing is the trends are people want that open space.
Right.
They want that community space. Let's build it for them. And so when they approached me, they said, what are your thoughts about this? I said, you know what? I love it because again, I do believe if you haven't gotten it right, things are still evolving. It's good to come back as government to say, let's make some revisions. Let's do that. So we allowed those changes. No greater density, just changing how the actual buildings will look. So a little bit taller, but adding that extra open community space for people to join, and to gather. So, Restaurant Row, let's talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, the famous Restaurant Row. Big
Yep.
redevelopment project going down there too.
Yeah.
That made waves a couple of years ago when that news broke. That's obviously been the heart and soul, I guess, a little
It
bit of
is.
San Marcos for decades.
It
And
is.
so when there's a shock change like that, the natives get restless. It's changes always can be scary for those who don't embrace it. But now there's a really, there's a built out plan. It's 10.5 acres, 202 residential, 30 commercial condo units. I don't know what that means, but that was just from the staff report I was reading.
Yeah.
And then 1 acre park, and of course pickleball. Got to have pickleball nowadays, and some other features too. I'm sure some retail space or commercial space, but that comes before the planning commission. I think next week or in the next 2 weeks. So just your thoughts on how that whole plan has evolved over the last year and a half.
As a gal that moved to San Marcos in 1987, Restaurant Row wasn't very old. It only opened in 1976. So I moved there in 1987. You look at San Marcos, it has been the heart and soul of the community. When I was approached by the developer, and by the way, I think most of the angst that came from the Restaurant Row change was it literally sold in the middle of the night. That's how people felt. It really was a very awkward transition.
I don't know if banks are open in the middle of the night unless they're, maybe doing a deal with an English bank or something over in UK or Europe.
It was
but,
during
I get
COVID. It was
get
during the middle of the night. And so many people felt very afraid of what they didn't know.
Right.
Myself included. And, when the developer that had been approached by the owner of the property came to me and said, what are your thoughts? I'm like, if you think that you're going to come in and a restaurant row and have none of the history preserved, you're going to upset me. And I am very invested in this community. I've served a long time, and it's really important to me that you listen to the community. You hear what they have to say. Respond to what they want to see as far as park space and all of that. Be a good community member. And, they did. To their credit, they walked in with pitchforks in many cases of the community and said, you know what, we're not going to shy away from this. We're going to hear what you have to say. And, I understand, a lot of people were very upset. In 2012, when we changed the general plan, we had so many outreach events. I think there were 38 of them. The community They didn't show up because they were happy that what was going on in the community. This is when it actually was approved. And, we wanted that feedback, but that's when it was approved to do mixed use on that piece of property.
Gotcha.
So, that's a very important part of this. But I think also responding to the community further in the concept of what this plan will look like has been really important. I believe that they have done this. They are creating community space. One other thing that I told them is I said, you can't just wipe it off the face of the earth. We need the history, the story of Restaurant Row preserved. So they've assured me that they are going to do that with a story somewhere located within the Restaurant Row park area. The other thing that they did is they hired an outside consultant to say, okay, we've got this exciting opportunity. We want to try to preserve some of the inside space of what's going on in Restaurant Row, some of the beams that are in it, that sort of thing. So they have gone in and categorized every single beam, special element, and whatever they're not able to capture within their development, they're going to offer to the community to, you know what? You want a beam from Restaurant Row? Come and enjoy it. Take it to your home. Have it as a fireplace mantle. Anything that you want to take, we will offer that up. You take it.
That's
you
great.
get to keep it. Yeah,
I think people really relate to that kind of stuff. You
think
see
so.
that with especially with demolition stadiums and stuff like that. That's a core to some of those cities. I'm a Denver Broncos fan, and there's a Broncos bar in Solana Beach, and the owner has seats from the old Mile High Stadium, and it's like, that's a cool thing. So
it's nostalgic.
Giving a piece of that history to those in San Marcos, or at least having they have access to that kind of stuff is a really neat feature of this, and it's a dynamic project too. I mean, when you're looking at it from scale, you got the movie theater right there, you got that other kind of mall shopping center behind there as well. So there's a lot of things to do, and then I wanted to kind of pivot to this as well, is that Creek project with Discovery Street or Road, tying North City, and that'll probably some ways connect with this new project over at Restaurant Row as well.
Absolutely.
So how much of that project, is really going to be able to open up that area of the city from, what would that be? The west side, I guess, of the city from your new downtown. So
back in 2005, when I was a member of the Creek District Task Force, the last iteration, I should say, we always envisioned really creating a space where we have a downtown, but it's not just one little small defined downtown, but it kind of really is a connection of all the parts of our community that are able to have that how do I put this? The old home ownership of a home, a house, and a neighborhood. How do we connect the more urban sort of living with each other? And and again, that comes back to planning. And, we always envisioned, we went on so many field trips during my time on the Creek District Task Force. How do you connect and bring together all these parts of the community that would otherwise live independently? Part of it is really creating those connections. So that Discovery Street is a very important connection. Craven, Discovery, via Veracruz, all of it really will be connected via roads. But also, let's not forget an area of the arts, which we just approved at our last city council meeting. That is moving forward. That is also creating more community space. All of this is really reacting and responding to what's happened with people wanting to spend more time together, wanting to have those connections, and really creating that downtown space that we never had in San Marcos. I think it is an evolution, but I also think that it is I know it seems that there's ashes at Restaurant Row in some cases because it is the end of something old, but the beginning of something new. But there can be beauty from those ashes, and really connecting those spaces with North City, Restaurant Row, and the Creek District, and then also area of the arts, which is now Marcos, right there at Linda Vista and Grand Avenue, creating that connection and the community space and the really community involvement and that sense of community has been something very intentional that I've done. And I think it's important for us to move forward. Again, having the customer experience team and all of that, I think we're moving San Marcos to the next level. I say many times that we've created the sundae, but now we've got to get that whipped cream on top and that cherry and those nuts. All of those things are really important for us, and I believe that that's what we're doing. We're going to the next level.
Well, I agree. Thank you so much for joining us. I would say San Marcos and probably Oceanside are two of the most active cities in North County. I love what's going on there. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, my name is Steve Petersky. I'm the co-host and guest host, actually, since Steve Wire's sick. You can visit me. Check out my writings at North County Pipeline on Substack. That's ncpipeline.substack.com. And next week, Steve will be back in the host chair. So we'll look forward to having him back. And thank you so much for listening.
This has been another recorded episode of Stay Classy San Diego with your host, Steve Wire. Thanks again to our sponsor, MaxLux Media and maxluxmedia.com. Check us out at stayclassypod.com or any of our social media outlets. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and everywhere else you get your podcast content. Please like and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us continue bringing you important content that you're not going to see anywhere else. And thanks to all of our listeners for tuning into the show. See you next time. Stay classy, San Diego.